The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Love news but find keeping up a bit overwhelming? Well, Newsable is the answer. It's your daily fix of everything worth talking about. I'm your host, Imogen Wells, and in about 15 minutes, I'll bring you what you need to know from Aotearoa and around the world and explain why it matters. Newsable tackles the big stuff without taking itself too seriously. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by The Spin-off with help from Callaghan Innovation. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
On the 4th of July, Independence Day, just some 4 years ago, today's guest started a new company in the tech space. Having come out of some of the world's biggest ICT companies, like IBM and Cisco, Mike Jenkins was keen to help use the power of this cloud technology thing to help businesses do better. And look at how it's gone. Today his company is working with some of New Zealand's biggest companies, like Fonterra, through to helping retailers like World run better businesses. He was awarded the Emerging ICT Leader at the CIO Awards and got the Digital Transformation of the Year gong at the IDC Australasia Awards for their work transforming Fonterra. From starting with 3, they've grown to 30 employees and are just getting started. In fact, just the other week, they signed a big deal with Google Cloud. To talk about the power of the cloud, the effect it's having on business, and how he's used it to get himself along, Mike Jenkins joins us. G'day.
G'day, thanks Simon.
Hey, so tell me what first attracted you to the tech industry?
Yeah, I mean, my journey into tech's probably a little bit different from most people. My family, actually, my old man grew up in the industry, having been part of the computer land era, which was relatively popular in New Zealand in the late 80s, early 90s. And he gave me some advice around industries that I should pursue, I guess, as a new graduate, which was basically stay away from tech. It's full of geeks and look at property or finance, but wasn't very good for taking advice back then. And so really I just landed in tech by meeting some great people, and that's what really attracted me to tech.
And what kind of work were you doing? Like, were you helping in the big companies?
Yeah, so at IBM and Cisco, it was a lot different to what we're doing now. To be honest, back then we were in the game of shifting tin, and fundamentally people believed back then that big IT hardware solved business problems. Unfortunately, it just didn't. It was just consuming more of the same and really made the problems bigger. So yeah, we did a lot of work around servers and storage, and at Cisco more recently, probably some of the cooler stuff around mobile packet core and the evolution of 4G around the world, which actually did make a big difference here in New Zealand particularly, and connected some of those remote areas that hadn't previously been connected.
I mean, there's something about technology and humans in that we bank the gains so quickly, eh? We just take stuff for granted so fast. But it's not long ago that there wasn't a cloud option, and you did need that room full of tin, the servers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the emergence of software as a service has been the real killer, if you like, of that tech. Because to start a business anymore, whether it's software or hardware, you don't need the hardware anymore. You literally spin up an instance in the cloud in less than a minute, and you can deploy your software to that stack in less than another minute. So within 2 minutes, you've got an app that's actually available around the world.
That's one of the big things that Mark Andreessen picks up on, doesn't he? Saying that it used to be that a tech startup needed 5 engineers and a CTO and a massive amount of investment in technology, and now it's just a person with a laptop.
Absolutely. Anywhere in the world.
What led you, so when you were seeing these changes coming in at these companies that still made their money out of selling tin, what led you to want to make the jump and set up your own shop?
Yeah, I think it was probably a bit of a reality check for me. When you start to see your core business, as in the selling of IT hardware, evaporate, you've got to start asking yourself some questions. Is it the company I'm working for? And they seem to still be making billions of dollars a year, so maybe not. So we went out and talked to the customers, to be perfectly honest. So we went out and talked to 20-odd customers around the world that I was fortunate to have in my black book from IBM Cisco days. And we talked to business owners, CFOs, and really the feedback was overwhelming. They weren't getting what they wanted from us as a vendor. Their incumbent integrators or traditional business partners in that IT space, and they were screaming for something more, to be perfectly honest. And so, that combined with a bit of a research trip to the US led us to believe that this tidal wave of cloud, and particularly public cloud, was coming, and there wasn't really a player in the Australasian marketplace that was grabbing the bull by the horns and fronting up with an offer that they could consume.
And so, what did you do to take the leap? Because you started in San Francisco, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. We had an interesting time here in New Zealand. I was very fortunate to have some great support, from some of the executives in Cisco and exiting Cisco. But that meant we had to sacrifice, competing in the same market for a period of time. So for us, again, as part of that process where we did essentially an informal customer survey of some of those business owners that we knew, there were a lot of very cool businesses and Kiwis and Aussies doing some amazing things in North America and the UK. And so we were fortunate to leverage those relationships to actually launch our company with a global view first, as opposed to here at home and trying to expand offshore.
And does that help? I mean, I look at the list of the people who you work with and represent and kind of resell to these companies here. Amazon with Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, Google with Google Cloud. Did having that footprint in San Francisco help you make those deals, build those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, and I think our quality time in the Kiwi landing pad. So big props to all those guys that run that. For us, it was amazing, because we literally had a direct connection into Silicon Valley. And the Kiwi network, and through Kia and those types of things, should not be underestimated. So that was huge for us in connecting us into, whether it was Kiwis and Aussies in big roles in those big businesses. And to be honest, that's been a real differentiator for the Instillery organisation, both here at home and away. We're no longer competing against the local, relationship with the local partner manager. Here, we've got senior executive relationships in AWS, Microsoft, Google, and we're looking into things like Alibaba as well as a result of that global presence.
How do you make a deal with a company like that? You've got the resume, you've certainly got the real great people skills. How do you get a meeting at Amazon?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually. I think, and I'll probably use Microsoft as an example, as opposed, because Amazon are very much thought leaders, right? Leaders in the public cloud game, top right Gartner quadrant when it comes to public cloud and platform as a service. For us, there was a natural attraction there as we were doing some relatively cool stuff, some groundbreaking stuff in public cloud as well as automation, which they could really vibe with. And some of the brands that we were bringing to them weren't necessarily ones that they had access to, born in the cloud SaaS players. Whereas I think the most interesting one, both for Google and Microsoft, is slightly more traditional players moving into public cloud. We've really seen a big...
You mean kind of like people they already were selling stuff to, bringing them away from the servers to the cloud?
Yeah, exactly right. And so a brand like us that was exclusively doing public cloud, or what we now refer to as multi-cloud, was really attractive to them in terms of establishing a partnership, not just for our customer, our stable of cool customers, but also because they wanted to be seen to be innovating with new, innovative, agile partners. So I think as much of our desire to work with them in a multi-cloud fashion was equally for them to help them with their rebrand and transformation of their brand into markets like Australia and New Zealand.
Let's look a little bit about, because we're talking about the public cloud, the multi-cloud, the cloud. What's your kind of... what do you, when you run into an old mate at a barbecue and they're like, what are you up to? How do you describe the cloud and what the potential of it is for businesses? Why it's exciting?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, multi-cloud and the cloud is a really interesting one. And to be honest, what it is for us when we're working with our clients is we're in the business of shutting down data centers. It comes down to the question of specialization. It's an age-old one around outsourcing and focusing on your core business. But fundamentally what we do as an organization is we allow businesses, whether it's Fonterra or World or Link Market Services, you name it, to focus on their core business. And we take care of the traditional noise and pain of managing a highly scalable infrastructure to support their core applications that they run their business on today.
So let's say they have a business that's going well. You are the people who, if they need more juice, more computing grunt, more storage space, all the rest of it as they grow, you just make sure it happens without them having to think about building another room to stick servers in. Is that the kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, whether it's launching in a new company, they now don't actually require an IT person in that company. So that whole regional distributed IT resource model, from the 90s and even early 2000s, they can launch in a new company without any IT hardware, without any IT personnel. And in fact, we don't even need to go there either. We can spin up their apps in the local region, ensure it's an amazing customer experience for their staff and their customers. And we can do it now in hours or minutes. So it's not a matter of weeks or months anymore.
And so how does that become a business? Because, where there's mystery, there's margin. And so the fact you've got 3 people in overalls spending 3 weeks building a server room, you can make a lot of margin on that as a business, I imagine. But if you're spinning stuff up in hours, how do you make money?
That's right, and so it is a really interesting game to be in, and particularly from a services company, and that's fundamentally what we are. We don't hide it. So for us, we look to invest with our customers, and we look at shared risk models. So through the speed and agility that you can deliver, and the enhanced productivity of enabling these teams to focus on their core business, that saves these big businesses in particular millions. And even at the small end of the scale, the cool companies that we're dealing with, like Benny at World, there's a massive productivity gain to be had by being able to focus on your core business and not worry about, do I have connectivity to my site? Can I get application access? Yeah.
Tell me about the World story, because there was a great line out of that story that I saw where he said, I don't give a shit what the cloud is, I just love that it works. And there was also a really cool thing in there about the idea that they just came to you and said, here are all of our bills. Can you make something better in the same price?
Yeah. I mean, it was a great story, and Benny and the team at World were really ahead of their time. They're a 20-plus-year-old fashion retail organisation, and I think really what they saw with the Instillery and some of our early reference clients was just that relationship and understanding that retail game, which is so critical if you're going to enter into any business partnership. So for us, what we were able to do with them was fully transparently look at the spend that they had in our arena today and look at the best ways to optimize. But to be honest, it wasn't really all about cost out for them. I mean, that was one of the outcomes, I guess, of engaging the Instillery there. But for them, I think fundamentally it was about business visibility. So, and a lot of what we do, whether it's large enterprise or in the retail hospo end of town, is about servicing data that already exists in those businesses today and presenting it in a way that's meaningful and allows them to make better business decisions. That's it.
So in the World case, and I know a bit about this because I've done work with you at Vendon, you guys actually, just for the old disclosure of interest things, I was so impressed with what you did there that I got you to come in and look after us at Ingrid Starnes as well. But how about the other end of the spectrum? So, that's World, a fashion store that people would know to walk into. How do you digitally transform a Fonterra to the extent that you get the gong?
Yeah, Fonterra is a great example, I guess, of a huge Kiwi but a huge global organisation that's grown massively organically. And that's really common with the enterprises that we work with. And a number of them, you hear them, they're embarking on huge transformation programs and, cost out agendas, enhancing productivity. I think the reality is for those businesses, they're all very similar in that they bring people in to do a job, but quite often they can get caught up in the sheer complexity and size of those organisations. So we're really lucky to be, I guess, a somewhat of a trusted independent advisor in there, and quite often we'll work with organisations like Fonterra to do a discovery of current processes, whether that's IT or the new evolution of digital, the combination of marketing and IT coming together to form this digital practice. So for Fonterra, that's exactly how that started. We were engaged by Mark and Raf in there, and we did a deep discovery, met with a number of application stakeholders, end users, and we, literally like the world story, we were able to surface some of those, what for them were hidden queues in the organisation. And by queues, I mean the time it takes to get from one process or one stage of a process to another. And so then we're able to quantify the time and then therefore the cost of those queues in the organisation. And then we've effectively just busted those queues with automating the IT processes around it. And we've gone and built a new tool that allows them, which we call digital pipeline, and combined it with a service that allows them, like I said, just to focus on their business, which in the Fonterra digital cases, operating a business in 32 countries around the world with over 100 digital agencies, and now they have full visibility from the creation of a campaign, which might be for a new website or a new Fonterra brand, through to the end and delivery of that website for that particular brand, which they previously didn't have. So that means it's 3 to 4 times faster to deliver those campaigns for a tenth of the cost, and they have full visibility throughout the process.
That's really interesting, and that idea as well that the first bit of data is you have to measure things to know which way you move things. And that reminds me a little bit of what you're doing with, and when you mentioned there that you build things, because you've built a number of things to give that measurement and visibility, like an AWS product to let people understand tell me, what was the AWS product you built?
Yeah, sure. So the Instillery business has really evolved. We're very firmly a public cloud or multi-cloud consulting house, right? And that evolved to us, having a slightly bigger team and being able to help migrate these big businesses and small businesses to the cloud and software as a service. The evolution of that business for us is transitioned through that whole managed services platform, which we still deliver, to actually creating apps that solve those business problems. And so we're still a long way away from being a development house, and that's a matter of public record, and we're investing in that area. But for us, we do want to continue to build apps that solve real problems, and we want to make sure that's tangible. And it's not always possible just through services alone. So for us last year in Vegas at AWS reInvent, we launched ClearState, which a couple of our team had got together and identified a key problem with in a number of businesses that we work with around visibility in the public cloud. The thing about public cloud, it's so easy to consume. People do. Yeah. And quite often there's a lot of bill shock involved at the end of the month if you don't have the right controls in place. So we developed a tool that gives them that visibility. It answers the question around how much am I using and what's the trend, this month to last month. And also, where is my data at any one time, which is a really important question in New Zealand government right now, particularly in the realm of public cloud. So we can say wholeheartedly, on this world map today, your data is all sitting in Australasia, or it's all sitting in the east coast of the US or Ireland or wherever it might be. And so having that visibility, again, allows them to make better business decisions.
That's interesting. And so with that, do you then sell it to other companies that are operating as managed service providers for people on AWS?
Yeah, that's right. And we've actually found a bit of a niche, which was never the intent. It was always for end customers. But so we're putting it up on the AWS marketplace at the end of the year. And so essentially any public cloud service provider, any digital agency that hosts multiple websites for people will be able to use that for their raft of businesses they look after. Black Software here in New Zealand, they host 100 plus different websites. They've saved 40% just from identifying things that we call orphaned instances that weren't attached to anything, which they just didn't have visibility of.
So they weren't attached to anything, but they were just drawing a whole lot of...
Yeah, massive costs, right, for an agency. Yeah.
And in terms of that building thing, so that's kind of like a tangible, intangible, like you're letting people see something that they couldn't see. What about in the agriculture industry with Node, where you're actually measuring something that's a bit of a political conversation at the moment?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Node's been a fantastic journey for me personally. Growing up in the Waikato, I got a lot of friends that are dairy farmers and goat farmers, and that's a really interesting market at the moment. But I think very topical in this whole election year around tax, the whole water question of taxing water on farms or whatever it might be. And I think when this conversation came up, we were quite well down the path of exploring IoT and the Internet of Things and what that actually means for Kiwi businesses, big and small, whether it's farm or retail or whatever you. And so when the topic of taxing water came up, we're trying to work out how people are actually going to measure it. Because, to be able to tax something, fundamentally, you need to know how much people are consuming. So basically, Node was born. We launched it this year. I actually launched it with a group of mates from high school down in the Waikato down there, who are actually all gone off on their dairy farming journeys and are analysts or consultants to multiple farms. So, we launched it this month. But, in a nutshell, what it does is remotely measures water from tanks and troughs across a farm, all with the comfort of your mobile phone. It literally starts for as low as $30 a month. So, it's accessible for lifestyle farmers all the way to the big corporate dairy farmers.
And I guess part of that is knowing how much you're using, but part of it would just be to know that you're not about to run out.
100%, or that there's been a leak in your tank or trough, which, you might do those visits on a weekly or even, 2 daily basis, and it costs a lot of money to go and get a truck and to fill that up. So so it's all about proactive farming or proactive visibility.
And how do you do all this stuff? So you're running the organisation, you're the CEO, and you've got a team of 30. But are you out there? It sounds like you're personally kind of involved in the app kind of brainstorming, creation, definitely the business development, heading off the international awards ceremonies. How do you make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I used to do it all back in the day, but we just quite simply didn't have the scale. So I'm really lucky to have quite an amazing team, to be perfectly honest, both at the Instillery and at Node. So to the point where Richie Wildman is now the founder of Node, and he's leading that evolution of that business, and I'm really just a backseat guy, and he knows that market better than anybody. But from an Instillery perspective, we've brought on a great leadership team over the last couple of years. Matt here, our CTO, does an amazing job in terms of the evolution of our service product portfolio and coming up with the crazy new ideas that will have a massive impact. We've got Jamie Wallace, who's our new Chief Operations Officer, Jeremy Nees, Chief Product Officer, and also a great young team, and I think the coolest thing about the Instillery and the team perspective is that these guys are young and they don't know what's not possible, so they're constantly challenging the norm, and that's something we want to keep up.
How do you upskill the things that you haven't known as you've been on this pretty amazing growth journey? Do you have mentors? Do you have mottos or words you live by?
Yeah, I'm not one really for mottos, but I do read a lot, and obviously listen to things, podcasts and that type of thing. I love vibing with particularly Kiwi entrepreneurs because it just blows me away how humble they are, and there's so many cool Kiwis doing amazing things. But to be honest, probably my biggest mentor is my old man. He's a chairman of our board, and he's just an amazing person to vibe with because he comes from a bean counter background, but he understands tech as well. And so, he's always a very good sounding board and a grounding conversation, in terms of, before you take flight too quickly, make sure you got, your house in order. So, those are a couple of people that I really look up to. And
there are a couple of things that I've noticed with some positions you've taken in the industry around diversity, which are really interesting as well, with a post that you wrote about what can be done to improve the industry after attending a conference where there were 1,000 guys and hardly any women. What was the response to that, and what was your position there?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a bit of a controversial issue, but I think in 2017 we should be able to have a pretty open conversation about it. There's a lot of people who are coming out saying that it's changing changing hugely, I guess, last year to this year. I mean, I call bullshit, to be perfectly honest. And I think it's not necessarily a problem just in the industry of job seekers. I think we probably need to go back even further. And people have talked it to death in universities and schools, but I always look at it from an Instillery perspective, because that's what's closest to my heart. We would have 100 to 200 people apply for pretty much every role we go to market for. I would see less than 2% of those being women, and I'd see less than 1% of those being Māori-Pacifica as well. So I think just as an industry, if I look at the lens of the Instillery, I think we're just missing out on a huge group of talent, fundamentally. So we're actually only picking from even less than half of the potential workforce, and I think I don't know the answer, apart from we're pretty proactively going out now to universities off our own back and connecting with schools and trying to get the word out there that IT isn't all about cardigans and bow ties, and it doesn't matter what you look like or what your experience is, but you can add value to the industry through your fresh lens. And so we're trying to do that, but at the same time, to be honest, the impacts, we haven't been able to measure it. So.
And also those ideas around needing certain qualifications or needing to have travelled a certain path before coming to your company. Is that something that you guys are also involved with?
Yeah. And again, for us, we're really passionate about it. I mean, there's certain roles where you do need some real deep experience, and fundamentally we get that. But what we're all about at the Instillery is connecting, so young, fresh lens, with some really experienced guys and girls. And so we give everyone a mentor at work, and we bring them together, and that's where the magic happens, that uninhibited ideas, with a bit of experience. And so we've gone to market with that message for those new entry roles. You don't need to be a computer science graduate. We can train you the Instillery way of doing things. And quite honestly, that's why it's great having what we call the retail and hospitality realm of the business as well, because we can bring in those young people and actually get them involved really early in real practical projects. They don't just go into the realm of 1,000 new graduates and get spat out the other end into some function. It's really all about trying to help them make an impact early and understand an industry so they can hang their hat on something and grow.
And so this whole cloud thing that you picked pretty early as being a transformational force in business. What stage are we at in it? Because the impact it's already having on New Zealand business and the ability to be international is hard to overstate, and I know people like you who are in it every day know, but I just don't know if everyone knows just how transformational it is. What stage do you think we're at on the cloud journey?
Yeah, I mean, scarily, 4 years ago when we started the Instillery, we were way too early. We were going into Kiwi businesses and Australian businesses, and they were freaking out at us talking about the world was going to change and public cloud's the future, and it's sort of not a matter of if but when. But I think in 2017 it's more widely accepted, particularly private sector. We do a lot of work with banking, financial institutions. They fundamentally get it. There's new evolutions now, not just public cloud, around automation and funky stuff like CI/CD and DevOps and blockchain and all that gobbledygook. But for us at the end of the day, New Zealand's still pretty, I would say it's an emerging market for public cloud, particularly when it comes to mass adoption. And so for me, one area I'm really focused on right now as an Auckland ratepayer is actually helping people like Auckland Council realise the value of public cloud, not just from a cost out perspective, but how to do more with less. And so, that's a message we're taking not just to Auckland, but down to Wellington as well, and GCIO. And there's been some really cool changes in that market that I think now enable the government to take advantage of some of the more modern technologies and not be stuck in the past.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to chat to us, Mike Jenkins, CEO of the Instillery, and we'll keep an eye out for what comes next.
Cool. Cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Madeline Chapman for producing, and thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound, and brought to you by The Spinoff and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spinoff Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spinoff Podcast Network.